For how cool of a concept Transformers really are, I think it's insane how mediocre the franchise actually is. Hey guys, welcome back to the video. In this video, you guys, my ranking of all 7 Transformers movies from the worst to the best. Before we get into my list, as always, let me know your ranking of all 7 of the movies in the comments down below. And while you're down there, make sure to subscribe button so you don't miss any time I upload a video or I go live. But don't waste any more time, let's get right into it. Starting off the list in 7th place for me is Transformers The Last Knight, coming in at 1.5 out of 5 stars. This movie is absolutely horrible. It basically takes every bad element of the Bayverse movies prior to this and shoves it into one movie. It is way too long, though it is shorter than Age of Extinction, still way too long. And honestly, all of this like mythological stuff with Merlin, it doesn't really click for me. That's not why I like the Transformers movies. In general, the franchise isn't the best, and you'll see that from my ratings throughout the entire video. The one thing I can respect about this movie is that they actually, for some little portion of the movie, prioritize Cade's story with his family. Even conceptually, this idea of Optimus Prime becoming evil due to this other entity and then fighting the Transformers and then coming back because of Bumblebee, all of those things, it's just not a cool concept to me, and so I wasn't engaged.
I am Nemesis Prime.
But next up on the list in 6th place for me is Transformers Age of Extinction at a 2 out of 5 stars. Another movie that's just not good. Age of Extinction is our first introduction to Cade, Mark Wahlberg's character, and I think as a whole, there are some interesting ideas here, way more interesting than what The Last Knight did, at least for me personally. But like The Last Knight, there's just not many cool concepts in this movie to go off of, kind of like the Dino, Transformer, Autobot thingies. They're not that interesting. There are so many just ideas thrown in these movies, at least in the Mark Wahlberg ones, that they just throw out there and don't do anything really interesting enough with them. I don't have many other thoughts on the Mark Wahlberg Transformers movies. They're just not cinematically the same as the first 3 Transformers movies, in the sense that I feel like there's not really an interesting enough connection between the humans and the Transformers / Autobots.
The trouble with loyalty to a cause is that the cause will always betray you.
For me to actually care about what's going on, they just feel like they're thrown in there for the sake of being thrown in there, and they needed a story that would work. Whereas the first 2 movies, to an extent, the relationship between Shia LaBeouf's character and the Autobots, it actually works. It's actually interesting enough, and you also have that family dynamic around Shia LaBeouf's character, which we can talk about right here in my 5th place, which is Transformers 2 Revenge of the Fallen. This also comes in at a 2 out of 5 for me, just because I feel like this movie does a lot of globetrotting, and honestly, as I was watching Rise of the Beast, the newest one, I kind of found myself feeling a similar way of, okay, they're going a little bit out there now. I kind of liked it when it was set in one location. You get this destruction, you get to understand this environment, this setting, you kind of get to understand those specific things, and that's what you connect to, and then that's when the destruction actually feels like it means something, instead of just globetrotting around the world. Revenge of the Fallen just doesn't do anything very interesting with the take of the first movie combined with what the third movie does really well, in my opinion, which is setting up very, very high stakes. I think Sam Witwicky's story as well in this movie is not nearly as good as it is in the third. And I think in the third, obviously with Megan Fox leaving, you have a new love interest coming in, and then you have a whole new story with Sam Witwicky and him trying to move on with his life from the Autobots. All of that is super interesting. I won't lie though, I think out of the first 3 movies, honestly, actually, maybe the whole franchise, this is really, really funny. Like, I found myself laughing a lot, and I think it's because they balance a lot of the environments really well, at least in the first act of this movie with Megan Fox, Shia LaBeouf, and just this whole college environment. It is hilarious to me. And Revenge of the Fallen, more than the first and the third movie, focuses on the Autobots' history, which I also found engaging, but at the same time, these movies are just way too damn long, and this one especially, I felt the runtime because of all the globetrotting. But moving up the list, in 4th place for me is Transformers 3 Dark of the Moon, and I actually really enjoy this movie. Again, runtime, very big issue with all of the Michael Bay Transformers movies, but in terms of story and content, I actually really, really enjoy this one. This is also, I feel like, the first time out of the 3 movies that I was very, very interested in the lore of the Decepticons and the invasion on Earth, the Battle of Chicago.
You must see why I had to betray you.
I think for the first time in this franchise, I felt like the stakes were actually there. Like, it didn't feel like they were BSing some just big robot alien invasion thing. Like, I felt a good connection between me, Sam Witwicky, the actions that were happening, and just the consequences of it as well. When you do think about it from a little more of a logistic perspective, which why would you? It's a Transformers movie. The fact that Sentinel is a double agent is actually insane because he's supposed to be a prime. Like, he is supposed to be the most heroic of the heroes. There's just no reason why Sentinel should be a double agent, but nevertheless, it's still a really cool twist in my opinion, and I had a really fun time with this film. Before we get into my top 3, again, let me know your ranking for all 7 of these movies in the comments down below. But in third place for me is the original Transformers from 2007, again at a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Honestly, as I started watching these movies for the very first time this year, I had seen parts of Transformers a lot throughout my entire childhood, as other people around me were always watching it, and I never really got invested into it. I knew about this franchise for very minimal reasons: Michael Bay, Shia LaBeouf, and Megan Fox. That's pretty much all that people talked about. I never actually heard people talk about the Autobots themselves, and after watching this movie, I understand why. And that's my biggest problem with the Michael Bay Transformers movies in general, which make up most of this franchise, is that I just never feel connected to the Autobots enough. I think Bumblebee, though, is obviously the main, or honestly, like, the double protagonist, the secondary protagonist of this movie, and that's why I think it works compared to all of the other Transformers movies that Michael Bay made.
Okay, there's a monster right there, just attack me.
This one, you have the deepest connection between your protagonist as well as an Autobot, and I think that's why it works really well. Also, Megan Fox is a great secondary protagonist.
These 22s, I don't want you grinding them. No.
I wouldn't say the character work is very deep per se, but I think that the characters work in tandem with one another and they tell a good enough and entertaining enough story. This movie also suffers the least in terms of pacing issues from all of the Michael Bay movies. I really enjoy the way that this one is paced out, especially with just having an introduction of the characters at first, but then also being introduced to the whole lore of the Transformers and then connecting the both and actually getting to kind of understand the Autobots and human connection.
We've learned Earth's languages through the World Wide Web.
I think that's also where my top 2 movies succeed, is because they take place before the Michael Bay movies, and so you also get to explore that connection as well. But speaking of that, moving into my top 2, in second place for me is Transformers Rise of the Beasts, the newly released Transformers movie, also coming in at a 3.5 out of 5 for me. I honestly really enjoyed this movie. I had a big, fat, stupid smile on my face the entire time. My biggest pro to this movie also leads to its biggest downfall, and that is, it feels like a very personal story, but at the same time, the writing itself tries to be super big scaled and grand, and you have all these big, super massive scaled events, but you also try to be very personal with Noah Diaz. I think that's the character's name. You try to be personal, but also super big scaled, and I think this is the best of both worlds that the Transformers movies have done so far, because Bumblebee is definitely more on the personal side. The Michael Bay movies are way more on the big, grand, super wow scale type of factor, but this movie tries to bring them both together as best as possible. I will also say though, I think the title Rise of the Beast does oversell the beast aspect of this movie, because other than the eagle lady flying, the one voiced by Michelle Yeoh, other than her, the beasts aren't really introduced until the final act of the movie, and so it doesn't really feel like a Rise of the Beast to me. I will say, in terms of new additions, Noah Diaz, amazing character. I won't talk about the ending in this video just because I don't want to spoil it, but I'll probably talk about it on my TikTok, so follow me there if you don't already. But I think Noah Diaz, Mirage, as well as Bumblebee are just amazing characters in this movie. Bumblebee isn't in it as much as you would think, but he has some amazing moments. I had my entire theater just applauding and cheering, which I wasn't really expecting because my theater was dead for the most part, aside from a few jokes from Mirage, which got a lot of laughs at everyone. He's voiced by Pete Davidson, and honestly, I wasn't expecting a great performance. I was expecting something just to be shoehorned in there, have Pete Davidson as a popular guy that does the voice for a Transformer, but he's actually hilarious.
How big can this guy be?
He eats planets. So, like, way bigger than a planet.
But with that being said, I want to move into my favorite movie in the Transformers franchise, and that is 2018's Bumblebee, coming in at a 4 out of 5 stars. I know a lot of people might not like this movie because it's not big, action, epic scale like the Michael Bay movies. But for me, I didn't really find a way to connect to the Michael Bay movies. And Bumblebee takes every element that I love from the Michael Bay movies of connecting with humans and understanding a human and Autobot relationship.
I would hate anything to happen to her.
But also keeping it a little bit smaller scaled so we can actually have time to connect to the characters and care about these relationships. I think where the Michael Bay movies really had their downfall is at a certain point you get so big scaled that you don't even care about what happens to the humans. Like, yeah, they might get hurt, there's a threat of them dying, but in the large scale of it, if the whole universe is on the brink of extinction, I don't care about one character, one human person dying. But in Bumblebee, they keep it very, very low. They keep the stakes. Yes, the stakes are high in terms of us caring about Bumblebee, but it's not some massive world-ending thing.
He's more human than you'll ever.
The general story definitely makes you look at it that way because they're coming to Earth to find out where the Autobots are and kill them all and then take over Earth. But you never actually get to that point. You never see that happen physically and you never feel that physical threat, so they can still manage to keep it grounded in on Haley Steinfeld's character. I think Haley Steinfeld's character, I think her name is Charlie, is easily the best protagonist of any of the Transformers movies just because she actually has some sense of relatability to her and honestly her connection to the Autobots. And this movie is just very sincere. It feels like the people behind this movie actually care about a real human connection between Autobots and humans, and that's what makes it work the best in my opinion. But guys, that wraps up my ranking for all 7 movies in the Transformers franchise. Again, let me know your ranking for all 7 of these movies in the comments down below, and subscribe so you don't miss any time I upload a video or I go live. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.